time where people, subhanallah, you realize how much Allah is more worthy of your love than anyone else in your life. And if you can't give Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala one undistracted month, then it really teaches you more about who you are than anything else, right? Not as like a means of like making anyone feel bad about themselves, but saying that like the stakes are now higher than ever before. And so if there isn't that guilty feeling that you have when doing something wrong in the month of Ramadan, it's going to be extremely hard to find that in any other time of the year, right? So what I will say to you, whoever asked this question, how do you kind of, stay away from some of these bad habits, is really, really listen to that guilty, remorseful feeling in your heart. You'll have it, right? Like, and again, if you're in a relationship that may not be so permissible, and you do have like certain skeletons in the closet and trials that you're going through, what I will share with you is don't think to yourself that like, oh, if I just cut this off in Ramadan, that means like I'm a hypocritical Muslim, right? Because like the rest of the year I engage in it. No. Don't think like that. That's shaitan talking to you. That's like someone saying that like, hey, you basically missed like 4 out of your 5 prayers. Might as well scratch your Isha as well. No. Maximize on the good that you can, right? So in the month of Ramadan, if you have the opportunity to kind of nullify certain bad habits, don't think of yourself as a hypocrite because you're doing it in the month of Ramadan. Take it as, I love Allah. I'm ashamed to not at least take what He's given me, like Ramadan, right? So don't ever allow yourself to psych yourself out by calling yourself like, yeah, I'm a hypocrite, I'm not really a good person. No. Engage in what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. And who knows, if you sincerely ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His help in the month of Ramadan, guess what? Come Shawwal, it might just be second nature to you. It might just be second nature to you. You're like, you know what? I love who I was in Ramadan. I don't want to go back to who I was before that. And for 30 days, I proved to myself and I proved to Allah that I can reach that potential. So come Shawwal, that DM, it doesn't bother me as much anymore. It doesn't tempt me as much anymore. I don't really need to go back to that anymore. If that person really respects me, inshallah, we can go towards a much more, an option that's pleasing to Allah Ta'ala instead of something that's displeasing to Him, right? Very good.
Good, mashallah. So here we have, how can I maximize my du'as and my taraweeh? I think the really simple answer is that you have to understand what both do. So a dua is a sincere request that a person makes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not a wager. It's not bartering. It's not bargaining with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't say, oh Allah, you give me this, I'll do this. It's not saying, oh Allah, I need this right now, give it to me. There's no demand. A person says, oh Allah, I will give up X for your sake. Oh Allah, I beseech you by your most beautiful of names, grant me this. A dua is only as strong as the intention that goes into it. So a person stops and thinks and says, what is it that I need from our Creator? How am I asking? And sometimes there are times where a dua, you can always ask, but there are times when the dua rises up faster than others. The dua that's made in the first third of the night, between Allah and it, there's nothing. The dua that's made prior to the Fajr prayer, optimal time. The dua made on Friday after Asr, optimal time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always listening, but you have to also optimize for when is the ideal time according to the Quran and Sunnah. But at the same time, a person should ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala constantly and regularly. When you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ask Him for the greatest of your need. Ask Him by the best of His names. Ask Him by as many names as you can come up with. Oh Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Ya Sami', Ya Basir. Your dua should also be front-loaded with the idea that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might not deem to grant you that thing just yet. It might not be on the cards for you, right? And a person understands that the timing of the Creator is different than the timing that we're on. Taraweeh is standing for prayer more than usual in jama'ah. It is sacrificing sleep to maximize worship. Something that's always available to the believer, but is available in jama'ah only one time a year, is available collectively. So that means that when you get called to the da'wat, you don't stay for the extra tea and the chit-chatting until at 1 o'clock in the morning. That's when your friends are out at the coffee house. You take your leave of them and say, I'm actually going to go put in some work in the musalla, inshallah ta'ala. I'm going to go knock out 8 or 20. I'm not telling you to do either or. It depends on whatever you believe is the most correct. But your salah is also not just standing. It's more than just the physicality of it. It's that every rak'ah, every sajda, every unit of prayer is intentional. You're following the imam closely. You're intentional about every prayer. You're not cheating. You're not sitting and saying, I'll catch the next one. If you committed to praying 8 tonight, you got to pray 8. If you committed to praying 20 tonight, you got to pray 20. If you committed to an additional tahajjud after tarawih is over, you got to see it through. So the way that you maximize is that you set the intention and you see it through. So Abdurrahman likes to say, you say what you're going to do, and then you do what what you said. So it's being honest with yourself and honest with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Very good. Next question. Somebody says, how can we find a good balance of the socialization of Ramadan in Dallas, i.e. Suhoor Fest? Oh, God.
No.
And finding your own time for ibadah.
Here we go.
Oh, boy. Yes. Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and again, just to kind of back up what the Ustadh said, and then also what Jenna just mentioned, Ramadan is a test of time. Like if you're a person, how many people who in here like love like flash sales and stuff like that? Like you have like 24 hours to grab this, right? Villa hijabs, right? Like it's going on sale for the next 72 hours. Go grab them right before they're all gone. I mean, Ramadan, if you can't understand that 29 or 30 days is a finite fixed amount of time, and after this is over, it's gone, right? Life will go back to regular, and it's not supposed to. So I'm gonna knock out another question here. Somebody said, how do I hit like that after Ramadan effect? Well, if you think that after Ramadan is gonna be the same as before Ramadan, you're actually like it's not gonna happen. There's a reason why Ramadan is Ramadan, right? And if every other month after Ramadan was like Ramadan, then Ramadan wouldn't be special anymore. It's supposed to be special and unique, right? So very, very good. So understanding the concept of like the urgency of time. When it comes to the question about how to find a good balance of socialization of Ramadan in Dallas and finding your own time for ibadah, I will say something. When you go to sleep, and subhanAllah, everyone's heart is a great compass for how well you did on a certain day. You know how well you did, right? So if you spent an entire day socializing and you went to Suhoor Fest and like you got like 8 billion pakoras in one night and like, you know, whatever, 8 cups of bubble tea, you know when you go home at the end of that night, you probably didn't do the best that you could have done, right? I'm not saying this, I'm not making like a fiqh judgment about Suhoor Fest. I think it's okay, right? It's not great. I heard it's going down but I'm just kidding. Ever since it was here. I know it's a great social vibe and like a great social scene, but if I'm taking Suhoor Fest as like a kind of like a priority over myself making Fajr in the morning, then I have my priorities all wrong. If you can continuously commit to your worship, but also like have a social kind of capacity, then power to you. But if your social life is at the expense of your worship, then your social life now becomes something that's terrible for you. It's like when people ask the question like, is like this show, is it permissible or impermissible? Is TV okay or not okay? You can't give like a hukman like answer to that. Why? Because it depends. If you watching like an hour of a documentary is going to cause you to miss salah, then yeah, that documentary becomes extremely, extremely harmful for you. But if that's something that you can do and then you have like a hard stop at like 6:15 for Salatul Maghrib, then power to you, right? But at the end of the day, what I want you guys to know is that something that is an equation in Ramadan is that you never want to sacrifice your worship for anything. Because guess what? Suhoor Fest will go and you'll have like the Valley Ranch like food fest in like 3 months. You'll have like the Qaram Roots Community Souk like every few months. What you won't have is the ability to duplicate the Ramadan experience another time until the next year comes around. So take that timely opportunity for yourself. Those things will come around. You will have a good time with your friends in another month or 2 months. That vacation will, inshallah, make its makhraj out of the group chat. Okay? But Ramadan will not come back into your life like that until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills it for the next year. Right?
Bismillah. So I think we'll finish with this one, inshallah. I think this is a very common question. How to deal with the guilt of sinning or messing up during Ramadan. So here's the thing. The idea that you're going to have a sinless or sin-free Ramadan is a myth. You're going to fall short. You're going to not hit some of the goals that you set for yourself. You're going to make mistakes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ يَا عِبَادِيَ الَّذِينَ أَصْرَفُوا عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ لَا تَقْنَطُوا مِنْ رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ. Allah is telling the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam to tell his servants, tell my servants who have transgressed against their own souls to not despair the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you feel on day 10 that you've messed up and that causes you to fall short from day 11 to day 30, you've just lost 20 days. On day 10, once you're cognizant that you fell short, you make tawbah on day 10, and you say, inshallah ta'ala, day 11 will be better. You mess up again on day 11, you make tawbah, I'm going to be better on day 12, so on and so forth. The believer doesn't fall off the wagon because they make a mistake. They rectify the mistake, they make repentance, they commit to not falling into the same sin again, and then they take advantage of the rest of the month. And each of the 10 days of Ramadan is a different set. There's the 10 days of mercy, 10 days of forgiveness. A person doesn't give up because they fell short one time. A person understands that falling short is human, but being insistent on guilt and insistent on sinning, then you're going to be in a hole that's going to be very hard to get out of. So make the commitment to not fall into the same sin and to get better day by day, inshallah.
Inshallah. We're going to pause there. I know we have a bunch of more questions, but inshallah, what I'm going to plan to do here is for those of you who are coming to Thursday's soul food session, inshallah, this is going to be live during that class as well. So we're going to, inshallah, get to these at the end of soul food on Thursday, inshallah ta'ala. Okay? Because there's a lot of great questions here. I see that are people talking about post-Ramadan, people talking about Quran, how to engage with Quran, all these different things. So inshallah, we're going to, inshallah, answer those on Thursday in the last 10, 15 minutes of class, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Okay? Jazakallah khairan. We're going to make a closing dua. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us this month of Ramadan. Allahumma balighna Ramadan. Allahumma balighna Ramadan. Allahumma balighna Ramadan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, allow us to reach the month of Ramadan with great excitement, with great passion, with great preparation. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow this Ramadan to be a month of change for us, to be a month for our betterment. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow this month of Ramadan to be one where we grow closer to Him and not further away from Him. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow this Ramadan to be a month in which we re-find our love for His Habib sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow this Ramadan to be a month in which we mend a lot of our harmed relationships with our families, our parents, our siblings. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to mend those relationships this coming Ramadan. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this Ramadan is a month in which we are able to find the best versions of ourselves, where we keep away from things like backbiting and jealousy and slander, and we replace those things with love for the Quran and love for one another and love for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us for our mistakes. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to worship Him the way that He deserves to be worshipped in this month of Ramadan. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept from us. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilaik. Inshallah, Salatul Isha is going to be right now in the Qadam prayer hall. So inshallah, we just kind of encourage everyone to head over there as quickly as you can so we don't miss any of the Jama'ah, inshallah. Jazakallah khairan, guys. Assalamu alaikum.